Welcome to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast, and it's being heard on your favorite podcast platform, which I'm sure you're using right now. We have all kinds of platforms that you can hear us on: Spotify, Amazon. That's actually the one I prefer to use. Amazon, iHeart. We're all over the place. And we've got some great platforms, so tune us in, and as you're doing now, and pass the word, let people know. So anyway, welcome to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. And you know, as I've done before, we always begin with a discussion of the first reading. And the first reading skips around. So you may start in Genesis and you say, well, Genesis is going to take a long time because there's so many chapters in Genesis and so on. Well, no, we skip around. And this is a major skipping around because we have to understand, let's go back to who we are dealing with. We're dealing with Israel. And who is Israel? Israel was Jacob, and then Jacob becomes the one who basically steals the birthright from Esau, his older brother, from his father Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. So we're talking that whole family in there, and we're seeing that. And now we are with the early brothers who formed, they were the sons of Jacob, who formed the 12 tribes of Israel. And these 12 brothers who formed the 12 tribes of Israel were themselves not necessarily the nicest guys, and they sold one of their brothers, Joseph, into slavery in Egypt. So this is what the reading is about today. It actually skips that. It's the aftermath of that. So they sell Joseph into slavery, and Joseph ends up in Egypt, but he ends up, because of his talents, becoming a major figure in Egyptian government. I think he was like number 2 in Egyptian government. And now the brothers find themselves in a horrible famine. They go to Egypt to get relieved of the famine. And who did they find there? Well, they found the number 2 man in Egypt, having no idea it was the brother they sold into slavery. And he knows who they are, so he starts playing games with them. And eventually, they understand who he is, and he forgives them and says, you know, look, what's done is done. It's over and done with. But this is the kind of humanity. I mean, this is basically extreme in a sense. If you look at that, you're going, well, you know, look, there's that little sibling rivalry, but someone selling their brother into slavery, it's a little extreme. Yeah, but he became the vice president of a country. Well, yeah, but that's still a little bit extreme. So therefore, I'm not so sure I'd want to be part of that family. Look what's going on with that family. You have the father, who is Jacob, who struggles with God and basically gets named struggles with God, has this fight with God, but he stole the birthright of his older brother from his father, who was the son of Abraham, who Abraham almost sacrificed to death because he responded to the request from God, who was just trying to help Abraham understand that he showed his love for him in the same way the pagans did, but that's it. He didn't have to carry it out, and never would the Jews have to be engaging in human sacrifice. So this is the family. And the reason why that's important is to understand that no family is perfect, no person is perfect, but God has graced them all, including your own family. Well, my family's a little bit off the wall. I'll tell you, you should see what my family's like. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that your family is outside of God's grace. Yeah, but there are families that believe that. There are people that believe that. I could never be in God's grace. How? How is it that you've got God figured out so much that you know what he appreciates and what he doesn't? Well, our family's a little bit off the wall. You got to understand that. Well, maybe it is. but that doesn't mean it's outside of God's grace. Kind of, you can hear all those little family stories and stuff from your own family, other families. I remember one time I was in Boy Scouts, and the mother was a wonderful mother. She was, what was it? She was the mother of one of the officers, I guess, in whatever you call it in Boy Scouts. I made it all the way up to tenderfoot in Boy Scouts. And she made some cookies and a drink. And this is wonderful. This is great. So what a wonderful person she did this. Well, I have to be honest, to this day, they are the worst tasting cookies I still almost have nightmares of these cookies. And I had one. It was the worst tasting thing I ever wanted to have. And then I grabbed the drink to kind of wash it down. Tasted exactly the same way. It was horrible. Oh my God. We'll be right back right after this.
You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452.
That's 617-297-7452.
617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try.
617-297-7452, 617-297-7452.
So anyway, we're talking about the family that comprised of the son of Abraham, the sons of the son of Abraham, so the grandsons of Abraham and the great-grandsons of Abraham, and some of the issues that were part of their family, including selling one of their brothers into slavery. But knowing God's grace still worked through them, and as crazy as the family may have been, they became the founders of the Jewish people, later what would be known as the Jewish people. Remember, at this time, they are not known as the Jewish people. We can call them Israel, named after Jacob, but they're not going to be called Jews until long after King David. So that's an important, and that's millennia, not millennia, centuries ahead of time. But, and speaking of someone who had a strange family, you can even talk about David. I mean, remember, David had an affair and murdered because he was king, he murdered the husband of the woman he had an affair with, and then got caught by God, and he had to beg God for forgiveness. But I mean, that's some of the strange family. But that's why, when you start getting into this thought, well, we're called to be perfect, and our family isn't perfect, or I'm not perfect, and my family is perfect, but I'm not perfect, or whatever the case may be. And you have to realize, no, it doesn't work, because God's grace is calling out to everybody. I grew up, I am a baby boomer, and I grew up with watching TV, obviously, and we, the whole story. We had network TV, and there were only 3 networks at the time, but you had the entertaining shows, and I grew up with the Munsters and the Addams Family that were on not nightly, they were on weekly TV. And God's grace would even reach out to the Addams Family and the Munsters. If you haven't seen them, they were these great shows. I'm sure you've seen them because they've been in reruns forever. And they were these great programs that they were like monsters that had a regular family. And they had strange families, that was part of the deal, but they were like monsters that had a regular family, but God's grace would still reach out to them. It was always fascinating. Now, just by the way, a kind of an interesting little story in light of that, if we take that as just kind of a parable, that even God's grace would reach out to the Munsters and the Addams Family. Those 2 shows they ran roughly about the same time, but they were developed independently. It wasn't that one network said, let's copy the other network. They just by accident came out and they came out with the 2 shows. As I understand, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they came out with the 2 shows, and on 2 different networks. I think the Munsters was, now I don't remember. I think the Addams Family was maybe NBC and the Munsters was CBS, or maybe it's the other way. And I think Munsters was CBS. But in any case, they came out with these shows independently. And suddenly, here they have two similar themes, totally different programs, but two similar themes. But again, when you look at the craziness of those families, and I don't know if you have ever been in a situation, I used to sell vacuum cleaners door to door. And actually, there was a cleaning system. It actually was. It was a great system. If I had the money, I'd buy one in a heartbeat because they were very expensive. But they were definitely worth it. And in any case, they were a great system. But sometimes you went into some houses that you go, I just can't wait to get out of here. I just can't wait to get out of this house because this is we walked into one house that I personally think was a drug house. It was wild. It was like this was in Southern California. This was in Downey, California, I believe was where the house was, or at least somewhere Glendale, somewhere around that area. And we walked in the house, and it was just so bizarre. But it was like 95 to 100 degrees out, and there was someone dressed up like like a Quaker in cotton, very heavy cotton clothes, cotton, with that type of hat and the whole bit, when it's close to 100 degrees out, and he's just there and the whole bit, and just a crazy situation. And it wasn't because he was a Quaker. It was that this was a bizarre house. I remember I walked into another house. This was kind of funny. Is when I was in the Navy, and so I had just gotten out of the Navy, and this was all during the early days of within 5 years of the Iranian Revolution. So a lot of people left Iran, and when they came to, a lot of them in Southern California, there are more Iranians in Southern California than there are in Iran. So anyway, this was Southern California, and we were in this place, and they teach you that when you walk, if you ever notice any traveling salesman who does this, when you walk into a place to, you're going to try to sell something, you always note something you see. The first thing you look at something, oh, what a beautiful painting. Oh, what a beautiful whatever. What a beautiful fireplace. What a beautiful TV. Whatever. You always do that. So I walked in, they had a Persian rug, and I said, oh, what a beautiful Persian rug. How'd you know we were Persians? I didn't know you were Persians, or you are Persians, but nice rug.
You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452.
That's 617-297-7452.
617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try.
617-297-7452, 617-297-7452.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.
So anyway, we're back, and I was talking about that experience of going into some strange places, strange homes when I was selling vacuum cleaners. So there was one place I noticed the Persian rug, and said, "What a beautiful Persian rug." How'd you know we were Persians? Well, when you're selling vacuum cleaners, what you do is you find their vacuum cleaner, and you have them, or you can do it yourself, clean an area of the carpet. And then what you do is you clean the same area. And it got this little device on the side that collects the dirt that you pick up. And of course, after they run their vacuum cleaner, then you run your vacuum cleaner, and they see all the dirt that they missed because it literally is a stronger vacuum cleaner. And at the same time, one of the tricks they did is to vacuum their bed. And when you vacuum their bed, what comes up is a lot of dead skin that is in your bed. Now, you may not like to hear that. Maybe I should have given a warning. Be careful. If you're reading right now, you might want to wait before you hear the next section, but it's too late. But y'all know that really happens, that, this dead skin, you tend to shed skin, and it is in your bed, and if you don't see it or anything, but when you use the vacuum cleaner, it shows up. Well, the husband thought, he was an engineering student at one of the local colleges. Well, he thought that this was all some kind of a trick, and he was trying to figure out what kind of engineering trick we did to convince them that their vacuum cleaner didn't work. There's all kinds of crazy situations out there, but God's grace is working through every one of them. And that even starts with the Bible. The whole story of the Bible. We can see that great story of all these very human characters we see in the Bible. Every one of them are people the Lord has called. So the message is, if you feel you are outside of God's grace, you're missing the point. Yeah, but our family is nothing like David's family. Oh, really? I would think that one through first. Or our family is nothing like Abraham's family. I would think that one through. Because all families have different issues, but God is working through all of them, and that's the whole thing. Turn your life over to the Lord, because maybe, as people might say, well, the average family is doing X, Y, and Z, and we're doing A, B, and C. We're nothing like this at all. We're nothing like them, and we do something completely different. Well, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. Great story I always love to tell, and this has become a powerful lesson. There was a woman lived down the street from me, and we called her my second mother. And she was just a wonderful person. She was a Syrian. Syrian, not Assyrian, Syrian. And it was really, really funny, because she used to make all the Syrian food, gusas and octopus and all this stuff. And she said to me one day, I could have made a fortune if I started selling pita bread, which we use all the time. But in any case, she was a wonderful woman who lived down the street. And she was very different than my mother. They were just two totally different backgrounds. And in our family, their family was just very different, but wonderful people. Well, her house was kind of, I don't know how you describe it, in a sense like an open house. Her house was a place that people visited all the time, and, just to socialize, and they had a pool, and they were always like, people were always welcome there, and it was like an open house. Well, apparently some of the neighbors up the street didn't like that, because there was, always cars coming, and there were people coming by, and the front lawn wasn't really a well-curated lawn, because people were crossing the line. I mean, kids were driving, not so much kids, but, teenagers would drive up in their bikes, and they'd leave their bikes on the lawn, because, the teens there and stuff. And they just come and sit down and watch TV, and they'd talk, and she, the mother was just always friendly, and she'd be welcome anybody, and her common law husband was always there. She was divorced, and her first husband was a wonderful guy too. Her first husband was a wonderful guy too, and then so I mean, it was just a fascinating house. But the house was. The yard was a mess. The house was nice, but the yard was a mess. And eventually, some of the neighbors from up the street, we lived on what is known as a dead end in really classy neighborhoods. They call it a cul-de-sac. Oh, it's a cul-de-sac. Some French word meaning it's a dead end. So we lived on a dead end. Perfect suburban background, the whole bit. So they approached her and they said, your house is making our neighborhood look bad. Well, she was a real tough woman, but she was hurt. I could tell when she told me the story. She was really hurt by that. The people would say that. And she was like really tough. She'd be the kind of person to tell you right off without thinking twice. And she was really really hurt by that. But she knew everyone. She was a... she was a crosswalk lady for a while, and they were licensed by the police department, so she knew everyone in the police department. They were all friendly with her. She was friendly with everybody. She's one of those people. She worked at it was one of those convenience stores, and anyone went to the convenience store, which just about everyone, they knew her from there. They knew her just, because she was friendly. She was very outgoing. She was just a wonderful person, and she really was. But so she called the police department and said, is this true that my house makes the whole neighborhood look like a mess? And this is an important lesson I learned. They laughed at her. They said, are you kidding me? Every neighborhood in your area has been robbed except for yours. And that's because the robbers see your house at the end of the street, and they don't know if they're going to get caught walking up the street looking for a house to rob. So they stay away from your house. So you have protected all those houses, and they should be thanking you. And this is a principle I learned because I learned if there's always a lot of activity around a church, no one is going to do anything to the church. We're going to be back right after this.
You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452.
That's 617-297-7452.
617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try.
617-297-7452. 617-297-7452.
Many, many years later, I was a pastor, and I was a pastor of two churches. It was one parish, two churches. You can hear my allergies are really acting up. Hold on just a minute. So anyway, it was one parish, but it had two churches. And there was still in business today, a mover who lived across the street from me, and he knocked on my door one time, and he said, I need some place to park my trucks, and you have this empty parking lot. I know it's filled on Sundays, but the rest of the week it's not filled at all. Would you mind if I parked my moving truck? And he had one, and I eventually had five, but would you mind if I parked my moving truck in your parking lot? And I knew this principle from this woman who lived down the street. It was my second mother. That's what we used to call her. My mother used to call her my second mother. So that's what we did. I mean, just this wonderful person. And I said, are you kidding me? Absolutely. Because I knew that if this guy is in the moving business and he's moving those trucks in and out of that parking lot 24 hours a day, no one is going to touch that church. And remember, I ran two churches. The other church was sabotaged. Someone in December broke the boiler so that the church would freeze, the pipes would freeze and destroy the church. And another idea. Thanks to this plumber who donated his time to fix this. He discovered this and fix this. And it was, could have been disaster because someone hated the church. We have an idea who it was. And he was jealous because his church got closed, but this church was able to stay open, part of this parish. And he literally tried to destroy the church, and thank God for this plumber who helped. But the other church, no one touched. And again, this is a principle I learned from some people who would look around and say, well, thank God our family isn't like that. No, God is reaching out to all families because all families have this great value and love. So if you turn around and say, well, our family is okay, but other families are not. No, that's God's reaching out to all families. And we can see that lesson. My allergies are acting up again, excuse me. And we can see that lesson in this story from Genesis. That crazy family from Abraham. Now it's time for another episode of Crazy Family from Abraham. Now one of the brothers who got sold into slavery in Egypt becomes the vice president, and all of a sudden the other brothers need to go to Egypt, and son of a gun if they didn't find each other again. Tonight at 7 o'clock on That Crazy Family from Abraham. Doesn't it kind of sound like that? But you can see that God's reaching out to all families. God's reaching out, trying to say, no, don't think that your family is special and other families are not, or the reverse. Back to the woman who taught me that great lesson. It was just such a powerful lesson and one of my favorite stories. Because she was known by everybody, because she was so friendly and everything else, and she was really someone you could go to and talk to about anything, and she was just really good. So anyway, her husband was in the hospital, and one of the things that she wasn't liking the care that he was receiving, and something went wrong, and she really got very upset, very angry. And I think she started yelling and saying, you better fix this situation. Well, they called security. Security guard runs up. And wasn't it one of the neighborhood kids who grew up with her? Security guard, their whole security team, and he just went, he called out her name, and she called out his. And he stopped, and he looked at the nurses and said, you picked on the wrong person when you picked on her. So you better do what she asks you to do. And they did. The whole bit. You learn lessons like that from all kinds of families, because all kinds of families have their issues and their good elements and their bad elements. And you can turn around and you can say, well, because of that family, our neighborhood isn't as nice as we'd want it to be, because that family protected you from losing some of your most valuable possessions, because that family is a warning sign to those who would want to hurt you. Didn't know that was happening. And God works with families all the same way. So regardless of what kind of family you have, God is working through it.
You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452.
That's 617-297-7452.
617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try.
617-297-7452, 617-297-7452.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.
And we're here every single day, and so I hope you enjoy the program. And don't forget to, as you can see, subscribe, comment, let people know, tell people about the program, especially if you liked it, even if you didn't like it. You know what he's saying? You should hear what he's saying. Let people know. And let's see if we can get the program to grow, because we talk about a whole different bunch of things, and many things that you're not going to find on other the Catholic channels of any type. So consider that. And here we are every single Monday through Friday with our half-hour format. And we'll do interviews. We'll do all kinds of discussions. We're going to talk all kinds of things. We start with a discussion of the daily reading, but we go from there. So consider that. In the meantime, remember that you can also check us out at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. catholicaudiomedia.com. That's catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. And as you heard, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check all of those, and don't forget catholicaudiomedia.com. Check all of those, and you can find all the powerful stuff we do and help us to build this program, build our audience so that we can speak to everyone in different ways than you're going to find at, well, what we used to call, remember I called it the spoon-feeding channels. Oh, no, you got to think the way we want you to think. Yeah, but that's not what the church thinks. That's not what the church teaches. And there are some of those people out there. Well, the church is telling you to do this. No, it isn't. I'm not telling you to do that at all. So keep that in mind. In the meantime, I hope you have a blessed day, and tune us in again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.